All the individuals in this narrative are over 18 years of age. My uncle passed away just as I finished middle school. He was a renowned architect. My aunt and I were devastated by his sudden loss. Throughout that summer, Aunt Clara would come home from her job and weep every evening in the dining room. I stayed inside, immersing myself in novels and lifting weights. Hearing her sobs was agonizing, yet I couldn't bear to leave her alone. As the academic year commenced, things gradually returned to a semblance of normalcy. My aunt and I divided the household chores, adapting to our new reality. The strangest change was Aunt Clara's refusal to sleep in their master suite. Our house had 3 bedrooms, and I occupied the largest one, which I'd converted into a personal fitness center. A yoga mat lay on the floor, various exercise machines were affixed to the walls, and a stationary bike sat in the corner. All of this equipment had to be rearranged slightly. Aunt Clara sold their king-sized bed and purchased a small love seat, which we placed in my makeshift gym. She also requested that her vanity be moved from the master suite. We relocated the stationary bike to the now empty master bedroom. Initially, we considered moving me into the master suite, but the securely mounted pull-up bar made that impractical. Additionally, my computer and its carefully concealed wiring were set up in my room. Thus, the master suite became a storage area, and my aunt and I shared my former workout room. We agreed to be mindful of our belongings and keep the space tidy. Because of our differing schedules, we rarely saw each other. I'd often return from school eager to head to my after-school club, only to find Aunt Clara still at work. By the time I returned from my activities, she'd already be preparing for bed. We did, of course, have occasional movie nights on weekends, but those were fleeting. 3 years passed with this arrangement. I didn't complete high school, opting instead to enroll in a technical program after my sophomore year. Aunt Clara continued her work as a florist. One evening, skipping my club, I worked out at home. Aunt Clara arrived, changed, and went to the kitchen to prepare dinner. After my workout, I showered. When I emerged, Aunt Clara was in the room, admiring herself in the mirror. She was wearing a new lingerie set. "Dinner's ready. Let it rest for a bit, and we'll eat in 15 minutes," she said, turning to examine the new garment. I'd seen her do this often with new clothes. "Should I congratulate you on the new acquisition?" I asked. "It was a gift," she replied instantly, as if anticipating my remark. Unfazed, I donned my headphones and focused on my computer. A few days later, she was at it again. The frequency of these gifts seemed odd. One evening, as she modeled another present, her uncharacteristic clumsiness and slurred speech revealed she was intoxicated. I was on my couch, flipping through a magazine, glancing at her occasionally. "What do you think?" she asked, posing. "Do you have an admirer who's giving you all this? Am I correct?" I asked, looking at her directly. "You are. It seems I'm still quite charming, and younger men find me appealing," she replied, settling beside me on the couch. "Younger?" I inquired. "He's a decade younger, but it doesn't seem to bother him. He's smitten." It was pointless to question her feelings about this new romance. Her delight was unmistakable. I wasn't surprised. I knew she was capable of finding happiness again. Life goes on, after all. My only concern was the smell of alcohol. I turned away, wishing her good night, unwilling to prolong the conversation. One night, I took a job unloading trucks to earn extra money. I called Aunt Clara to warn her I'd be late. Nearing home, I saw the kitchen light on, assuming she was waiting up. Inside, I heard a commotion in the kitchen, like dishes crashing. I rushed in, still in my work boots, and froze at the sight before me. A stranger was intimate with my aunt. Something snapped. I lunged forward, seizing him by the shirt collar, and propelled him from the kitchen, out of the house, and onto the landing. After slamming the door, I stood for several minutes, eyes closed, listening to the man's curses from outside. He didn't try to re-enter. I removed my boots and returned to the kitchen. Aunt Clara was severely inebriated. I carried her to the couch, then cleaned the mess. The following day, avoiding conversation, I went back to unload trucks. That evening, we had a harsh exchange. "Do you realize what you did?" she raged. "That was Mr. Harrison. He owns businesses all over town." "I don't care who he is," I retorted. "Why did you assume he loved me?" she pressed. "You don't treat people you love that way," I mumbled, pulling the covers over my head. 2 days later, while walking through the neighborhood park, I heard someone yell. It was Mr. Harrison, a bruise under his eye, accompanied by two other men. "Hey, kid, we need to talk," he sneered, confident in his numbers. "That's not fair. 3 against 1, a familiar voice interrupted. It was a family friend, someone I'd known since I was a child, approaching us. "You should have minded your own business, old-timer," Harrison taunted. I knew our friend's arrival was fortuitous. I felt confident we could handle them. I moved forward, striking first, still hoping for a favorable outcome. I explained the situation to our friend. "Things have gotten complicated for you, haven't they?" "Don't worry. Let me know if you need anything. We'll help," he reassured me, adjusting his clothing. My biggest worry was Aunt Clara. The image of her in the kitchen haunted me. Walking home, I pondered how she could have become involved with such a despicable person. Did she truly enjoy that lifestyle? Another shock awaited me. Entering the house, I found Aunt Clara passed out in the hallway, reeking of alcohol. I changed clothes, then knelt beside her. Realizing she was unresponsive, I carried her to the couch. As I laid her down, I worried about wrinkling her clothes. She was breathing softly, lost in a drunken slumber. In a moment of boldness, I took advantage of the situation, and we became intimate. The next morning, Aunt Clara fumbled to silence her alarm. I had school. Surprisingly, she wasn't getting ready for work. After my alarm sounded, I showered. When I emerged, she was in the kitchen. We ate breakfast in silence. "Did you put me to bed last night?" she finally asked, staring at the wall. She avoided eye contact all morning, lost in thought. I attempted to deceive her, claiming she was already asleep when I arrived, but she ignored my explanation. Still gazing blankly, she continued. "He fired me yesterday. He called me into his office, then, with a smirk, told me to see the accountant. How could I have been so foolish? I suppose you didn't punch him for nothing." I braced for her anger about the previous night, but her mind was elsewhere. "That's why I drank so much. I don't even remember getting home, let alone going to bed." Relief washed over me. She remembered nothing. I finished my coffee, thanked her, and went to get ready for school. My last class was canceled, and I returned home early to find Aunt Clara on the couch, a mountain of lingerie at her feet. Her head was back, eyes closed, tears streaming down her face. "Aunt Clara, what's wrong? Are you upset about all this?" I asked, approaching her. The smell of alcohol returned. She opened her eyes, reached for me, and sobbed harder. "I don't care about the clothes. As soon as I got rid of them, my friend called with a job offer," she cried. "That's wonderful," I exclaimed. "When I first met your uncle, I had a date. I was too embarrassed to wear my old lingerie, so I borrowed some from a friend. Now I'm in the same situation. I'll have to face a new team tomorrow in my old underwear." She smiled through her tears. Without hesitation, I grabbed the money I'd earned unloading trucks and left. I decided to buy her new lingerie myself. An hour later, I returned, handing her the package. She'd cleared the discarded clothes and was studying her reflection in the mirror. She accepted the package with a smile. "You bought me new lingerie?" she asked, surprised. She peeked inside, gasping at the set. Her eyes darted between me and the garment, beaming. I felt proud of my choice. "I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. I want you to always look your best. You deserve beautiful things," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You're the most thoughtful and caring man I know," she interrupted, sensing my earnestness. The alcohol on her breath reminded me of the previous night. I pressed on. "Please, don't drink like that again." "I didn't have much today, just a bit for my headache after yesterday," she deflected, looking down. "I mean, in general, I don't want to see you like that," I said, my voice trembling. "I love you, nephew," she interjected. "I love you too, Aunt Clara," I replied. "You probably want to see how I look in this," she said, opening the package and stepping back. "Nephew, could you help me with this clasp? It's tricky," she requested. I fastened the simple clasp, feeling awkward. Sensing my discomfort, she continued. "That date with your uncle, it was similar. Do you have any experience with girls?" she asked. "Sure," I mumbled, trying to create distance. She stopped me. "I've been reckless lately. I enjoyed Mr. Harrison's company, even though he was a scoundrel. He used me. I'm ashamed I brought him home. I simply miss having a man in my life. Do you understand?" I nodded, unsure where she was going. "You've been such a man throughout all this. You've been respectful, protective, and tolerant of my lapses. I'm grateful, and I want to thank you. As a woman, can you Do what your uncle would have done. Her meaning was clear. I wanted to tell her not to thank me, but my thoughts were clouded. We went to the bedroom and became intimate. Thank you, nephew. I won't do anything you disapprove of again. I promise I'll stop drinking. A reasonable amount on special occasions is fine, I smiled. Let's forget the past and start over, I said, meeting her gaze. She nodded in agreement. Nephew, could you get me a towel? I retrieved a towel from her shelf, grabbing one for myself as well. The bathroom door was open. She was waiting on the bath mat. When I emerged, she was on the couch, wearing a robe. I'll wear my old underwear tomorrow. Let's keep this set special. I'll buy you new clothes. I know your size now, she smiled, rising from the couch. You're so thoughtful. Afterwards, we lived like friends, openly discussing our lives. She continued to seek my opinion on her outfits. I often sought her advice before dates. There were times she'd forget her towel, and I'd bring it to her, our eyes meeting without any lingering awkwardness. Eventually, Aunt Clara moved back into the master suite. We redecorated it with new wallpaper and elegant curtains. My technical program was nearing completion. Aunt Clara thrived at her new job, returning home cheerful. One day, she arrived with flowers. I knew she had a new man in her life. One evening, she initiated a conversation. Nephew, I have something important to tell you, she said nervously. I could see her anxiety and wanted to ease it. Do you want to tell me you have a new love interest? I asked, meeting her gaze. Yes, how did you know? He proposed, she blurted, blushing. It wasn't difficult. I figured it out when the flowers started appearing, I smiled. She relaxed, the blush fading. What do you think? She asked, relieved. I want you to be happy, Aunt Clara, I replied sincerely. I'm thrilled for you. You're a wonderful woman, and you deserve to be loved. He's not young, a bit older than me, actually. We've been seeing each other for 6 months, she confessed, her eyes shining with happiness, knowing I approved. I have news too, Aunt Clara, I said, changing the subject. I received my draft notice. Her expression shifted, tears welling up. They finally spilled over. Don't cry, Aunt Clara. It's normal. All young men serve. I'm no different. Focus on your new relationship. Everything happens for a reason, I reassured her. Can we go to the recruitment center together to see you off? She asked, her eyes glistening. Of course. We can introduce you to my friend too, I replied. Time seemed to accelerate after that. The day arrived. I stood among the recruits, anxiously awaiting Aunt Clara. She emerged from the crowd, arm in arm with a tall, distinguished-looking man. I liked him instantly. As they approached, she introduced us. He extended his hand. A pleasure to meet you, young man. I wish you a safe service and a swift return. Thank you. The pleasure's mine. I'm glad to see Aunt Clara in good hands. Don't worry, nephew. We're happy, he assured me. The order came for us to move. Aunt Clara began to cry. As they receded, I hoped for their happiness, that she'd finally found it.